Hello beautiful people and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm so happy that you are here and I am so happy to be here. Today we have a very fun video. I'm going to be talking about my March wrap up. And the first thing I want to address is I realize that it is the middle of April. I really do. However, I'm still doing this video because I want to talk to you guys about the books that I read in March, and I already have some cobwebs in my brain about some of these books, so do bear with me, but I'm very excited to talk to you guys about them today. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. My Bookstagram and my TikTok are all linked down below, so I'd love to see you guys over there. Without further ado, we're just gonna hop right into this video. So in the month of March, I read 7 books, 5 were audiobooks, and then 2 were physical copies or on my Kindle. So that's pretty fun and exciting. It was definitely a very heavy audiobook because I was drowning in university. I'm still drowning in university, which is why this video did not get put up at the beginning of April, 2 weeks after my last video, the first week of April, because I was legitimately so overwhelmed with university. I'm still on the hunt for my first 5-star book of the year that's not a reread. So if you do have any recommendations after watching this video or just from watching some of my other videos of things that you might think is going to be a 5-star for me, I would really appreciate it. I'm still holding out hope that Funny Story by Emily Henry is going to be my savior of the year, because this has honestly been like a kind of rough start to the year. It hasn't been bad, like I've read 18 books, but I just haven't found that like amazing 5-star of the year like I had last year with, you know, That Summer Feeling and all the other, and Heartless and all that stuff. But I can't get off track. Sorry. We're gonna jump right in. As I said, we're jumping in. The first book that I ended up reading was in audiobook form, but I read Akamath by Sarah J. Maas. I don't think it's any surprise by now that I am in love with this series. I particularly am in love with this singular book. This is like the absolute perfect book from page 1 to the end. And you're probably wondering why I was laughing there to the end, is because this book, sometimes I'm a little bit of a cheater. I'm gonna be honest. Sometimes this book ends like here-ish for me. This is a spoiler. I'm gonna get into a spoiler. Sorry. But I specifically wait for the line from Cassian, mating bond chafing a little bit, Reese. And then that's when the book ends. I close it and that's where I stop it. And to me, like, I would never do this with any other book. Like genuinely any other book, but for this book I'm like, that's where it ends. I gotta protect my peace, because then I think like it sets it up a little bit. But this was the first time in probably like my last 2 rereads that I actually read to the bitter end, like the very last page, as you should do with a book. I realize what I do is a bit unhinged, and one of my really good friends who also reads the series thinks I'm crazy, and that's okay. I think it's okay to be crazy with books sometimes, and particularly with this book. It's such a home, honestly. This last little bit has been very challenging in my life with university, but then also with some things with my Nana, which I think I talked about in a different video, but I don't really want to get into it now. This book is such a home. These characters I love. I know this book like the back of my hand. I can tell you when things are happening. I can tell you the sequence in which they're happening. I love it. It's amazing. I rated it 5 stars. That's no surprise. It's the second book in the series, so I don't want to tell you guys the plot of it, even though I did have like a mild spoiler warning at the beginning. I love this book. Is it a bit cheeky at times / a little bit cringy when they're saying some things? Yes, but do I care when it comes to this book? Absolutely not. It's amazing. I love it. I'm done talking about it. It was a really good way to start off the month because I just kind of like needed that like little piece of home that this book offers. Then I listened to Jade City by Fonda Lee. This book was very interesting to me, and I was very engrossed in it, but also violently humbled by it. I am a romantasy girly, as you guys probably know if you've seen my wrap-ups, if you've just kind of seen me. I am definitely typically more of a romantasy girly, and this was like a really adult fantasy. And, you know, it took a little bit of a minute for me to be like, who is who, what is happening? But once I got it, I really enjoyed it. And I'm giving this book, I think it was like 3.5 to 4 stars. I think I'm gonna stick with a 3.5 because some parts I was really confused, but other parts I enjoyed. And I will say that now, like a month after finishing it, I don't really remember what happened. And I'm actually a little bit peeved about this because I had the audiobook on hold, and somehow like my library just like dropped all my holds. I don't really know what happened. There was like maybe like a technical thing, but suddenly I didn't have any books on hold, and so I had to like re-hold a bunch of books, and of course there's weeks wait, so I haven't been able to continue the series even though I do want to. Jade City, I'm gonna try to give you guys a synopsis, but I genuinely think that reading like the Goodreads would probably be a more successful endeavor than what I'm gonna do. So Jade City is home to two kind of like crime families. There's the Calls, who lead kind of like the major that you're gonna be reading about, and there's a bunch of different family members through there. You explore the power dynamics within the family as well as the magic that's in the system. So within Jade City, the magic is that people are able to harness the power of Jade, which gives them extra strengths or different things, and through that they have this kind of like magic, and so you're trained to be like a green bone warrior. There's also a feud going on between the Culls and another clan, so there's a lot of tension and kind of struggle with that clan. There's a lot of tension and struggle within the family itself, and there's a lot of twists and turns. I know that doesn't give you like a lot of information, but I feel like going in blind is somewhat helpful to this book, or kind of was really interesting, because I didn't know super a lot. I knew that there was Jade magic, I knew that we kind of followed the Cull family, and I knew that there were some tensions and kind of inner strife, but I don't think the politics are too complicated. So I think I'm going to leave my explanation of what it's about there, because I genuinely don't think I could explain it any better. It's one of those books you just kind of have to read. It's super, super raved about in the fantasy community, and I completely understand why. I just think for myself, I was like definitely lost on what was happening, and I think part of it was I was listening to it on audiobook. I feel like if I was listening to it and reading it, I might have been a little bit easier for me to grasp some certain concepts or certain things. But overall, it was a really, really enjoyable read. I do want to continue with this series when my library holds get back to me. It was good, humbling at times, because I was like, what the heck was happening? But I'm excited to continue. I then read Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. Now I know, so you guys are gonna judge me. I say, I'm not a YA girly, I'm not a YA fantasy girly, and then I picked up Tress of the Emerald Sea, which is a YA fantasy. But in my defense, one of my besties on Book Talk, her name is Morgan, I will like hopefully get her page somewhere here. She is so, so lovely. She posted a review on it and I was like, hey, you've convinced me, now I have to read it. This book was a lot of fun, but also very YA fantasy at the same time. So let's get into that. First, I want to say, of course, there's no reason not to be reading YA fantasy at different ages. That is not what I'm trying to say here. I just think for myself of where my reading taste is at, I definitely prefer more adult books. But the messages and the kind of like wholesomeness of the story was an amazing like YA book. I will say that it read a bit more of a cozy fantasy to me, because I was reading it as a perspective that I like didn't think that the stakes were that high, but I feel like if I was younger, I may have thought that this was like an epic journey and battle, because, or not battle, but like journey, because I was younger. But it was like a cute cozy fantasy with very like wholesome messaging, and the end of like how things were kind of like wrapped up in a bow. But the thing that got me in this book, the thing that I loved in this book, was the world building by Brandon Sanderson. The thing that I loved was the spores. So basically, we follow our main character Tress, and she is on this island, and you cannot leave this island, because if you were allowed to leave, no one would live there. There was a quote, I actually have to pull this quote up. I wrote it down, especially as a forestry student. I was like, this is so entertaining to me right now. All right, I got it. There was a tree, but it did the sensible thing and died. Now, it doesn't sound very funny when I said it, but like listening to the audiobook narrator was amazing in this book. It was hysterical, and also said it in the context of the fact that nothing green can grow on this island. Really funny. The way I was also learning about like forest plant biology and like the trees like life cycle, and not life cycle, but like things like that. It just struck me really funny, but now I'm realizing that it's actually not that funny. But it was funny to me in the moment at the time. But Tress, she lives on this island, and she's kind of formed this relationship with the prince on the island, but he pretends not to be the prince. And one day he gets sent away by his father to go find a wife, and Tress embarks on a journey to go find him because she really cares for him. It is such a wholesome story. There is a talking mouse. There is kind of like a found family through the pirate ship, but the thing of the world building was the spore oceans. Oh my gosh, these spores, any liquid, sprouts. And it was just the coolest thing I've ever read. Like, I loved the spore ocean. I loved the spore dynamic. I loved the exploration of the spores later in Tress's journey when she starts kind of fiddling with them. It was a lot of fun. I did give it 3 stars. It was kind of like twisty, turny, cute, cozy. The spores just really got me. You know, I really wish that quote was funnier. I'm gonna be honest. I thought it was like, I literally read it and I had to pause it because I was laughing so hard. But it doesn't sound very funny now. Then I read Don't Want You Like a Best Friend. This is a historical romance. So immediately I hope that you guys are like, oh my gosh, Ellie, good job. Thank you. I'm branching out in my romance genre. I don't read historical romance. I really don't. And Part of this book kind of reminded me why I didn't, but it also had like a fun twist on it to a certain degree. This book is about two girls, Gwen and Beth. Gwen has been on the marriage market for quite a bit with her dad, who is kind of guiding her, but he's also like a really chill, fun guy. And then we have Beth, who it's her first year on the marriage market. She really needs to get married because unfortunately her father just passed away, and it's put her mother and her in a very difficult situation because in this time women don't have the rights that they should have. So her male relative is taking over the family estate. So she needs to get married pronto because she's going to be out of money, out of a place to live in just a few short weeks or months, however long the marriage season is. Gwen and Beth strike up a friendship, and they end up uncovering that their parents used to be kind of like smitten with each other, and they devise this parent trap plan, get their parents together, which was a lot of fun, but also I'm going to talk about why unnecessarily I didn't like it at times. I thought Beth and Gwen's relationship was really cute throughout the book. It was like a really nice friendship, but then there was not like a lot of building on a romance. It was literally, I have like a note written down where it was like friendship, yay, boom, love, sex. And I was really shocked by this decision by the author, because this book read very YA. Because of this parent trap situation, a lot of the book was kind of this like scheming, which felt very juvenile. And then also how Beth's mom treated her, because I think she was like 19, something like that. Like she was quite old relative to the historical romance situation, but just the way her mom was treating her was very juvenile-y, and then they were scheming, that it just gave it a very YA feel, which is not a bad thing, but it was very strange to have that YA feel, and then like boom, open door explicit scene. I was like, whoa. First of all, where did this come from? Where was the like build up? Where was like the stray touches, the kind of like longing? We didn't get that. And then it was just like boom, they're together, but then there was also the scheming, and we just didn't get enough time with these two characters building their relationship up in a romantic way before things got like explicit. And then it was like a very weird kind of juxtaposition of like this kind of like YA schemy friendship, getting parents together, and then this kind of like open door spice, that it was a bit of a strange dynamic for me. And because of the scheming and everything, that really overtook the story, so we didn't get to see a lot of moments of them together and just kind of like being together. Like it was always about their parents. Ultimately, I gave this book 3 stars because I did really like the ending, and the epilogue was what I wanted more of the story to be like, if that makes any sense. Like I wanted that throughout the book, but I also really loved Gwen's ladies in waiting, I think is what they were. They were super sweet. I did like the side cast of characters, and I felt that they added a lot of depth to the video, or to the book, not video. It was a little bit of a miss for me, unfortunately, but I always do love a good sapphic romance, so I was happy about that, but it missed some of the pieces weren't clicking. The next book that I read was actually an advanced reader copy from NetGalley, so thank you NetGalley and the publisher. I read Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. As you guys know, Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez is one of my favorite books of all time. It's one of my favorite romance novels. It is just so amazing, and this book was an interesting time, and I'm going to talk to you guys about it. So this book is about our 2 main characters, and they are kind of cursed in the sense that both of them, whenever they date someone, when they break up with them, the person that they were dating immediately finds the love of their life, and they're just feeling very cursed. So they end up connecting on an Am I the Asshole Reddit thread accidentally, which was hilarious, by the way. And they kind of bond over this situation and decide that they're going to fake date for a certain period of time so that they can break up and then find the loves of their lives, except maybe they're actually the right people for each other. Who knows? I have to talk about Justin first, because this man is honestly the definition of if he wanted to, he would. This man is everything. He is the sweetest, kindest, most do everything, most considerate man there has ever been on the planet. He is so sweet. So if you're not into a main character whose love interest is just the absolute epitome of sunshine, rainbows, and love, and just kindness and thoughtfulness and humor, and just does the most, you're not gonna like Justin. But if you are, you're gonna love him. He was honestly like the team Carrie for the book. I'm gonna be honest, like his plot, his loveliness, I loved. This man is also very funny. Like for their dates, he would send out like surveys beforehand for the date and then like surveys after, which when I say that, you're like, that's kind of weird, but how it was written was very comical and very fun. So I really enjoyed that aspect. This book, like a lot of or like Part of Your World or even Truly Yours, there is a more serious aspect to that. And in this book, it was very heavily centered on the families, specifically Emma's family and Emma's mother. And so I actually did struggle with this plotline quite a bit, found to be way too much at the end, and also just throughout the book I think that it really overtook the story in some aspects, and it could have still happened just in a more kind of pulled back manner where it wasn't super overwhelming to the reader at times, because it really ended up taking away from Justin and Emma's story and just the book as a whole, just this constant negativity of this relationship with her mother, but also like the tension with her best friend. It just became quite a lot for me. Justin also has his own family drama, but I actually really enjoyed that kind of family situation because it was less overwhelming to the story. There wasn't as much of an impact on the story, and because it completely altered Justin's life, but it did it in a way that like it just was a lot more enjoyable to read because it was happy moments. Like he got to spend more time with his siblings, we got to see these children and kind of deal with that dynamic, which was overall more positive while it had its like difficult moments. I did enjoy that, and I felt that it was really well done and like the perfect amount for the story, that it wasn't too much. This book also has 17 million Easter eggs if you know where to look. If you've read Part of Your World, if you've read Truly Yours, I'm sure I haven't read any other Abby Jimenez books, but I'm sure if you read other books there might have been like Easter eggs for that too. But oh my god, there were so many Easter eggs, and there were so many times where like my jaw was on the floor because I had just made the connection of who they were talking about or who was what happening, and it was a lot of fun in that regard. But I think that the lack of balance and overwhelming of Emma's family and at times Emma's situation just was a bit too much for me, so I ended up giving it 3 stars. Then I went and I hopped into One Dark Window, and now again this is classified I think as a YA fantasy. It was a lot of fun. This book was super interesting because it had a tarot card magic system called Providence cards. I don't want to get into like the history or the world building of how these cards came to be, but basically there is a certain amount of cards in a deck, and each card has a certain specific number that are made, and when you tap the card 3 times you then get that power. These cards are genuinely, I'm making them sound weird, but they were actually so cool, and I had never read any kind of like tarot card magic system before. But it's about our main character, Elsbeth. She ends up getting sick, and when you are sick you are reported to the physicians and basically your life is over. However, Elsbeth is ended up hidden, and she ends up inheriting magic through some means, and she has this kind of darkness that is in her head that you will hear from during the entire story. So it's a very interesting read, hearing Elspeth's voice versus like the darkness, and then like how that gets her through the dynamics of the family and the guy, specifically Raven, that she gets involved with. This was honestly, it was a lot of fun. I think that this could have been a 5-star if I had read it better. I definitely read it very broken up in audiobook form to the point where I was like 75 or 80% finished the book and like didn't read it for like 4 days because I forgot that it existed, which I don't know what happened, I'm gonna be honest. That's not the book's fault, but I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was a lot of fun, but I will say that the one thing that I didn't enjoy was that I felt that a lot of times, instead of Elsbeth getting herself out of situations, she like curled up into like inside of herself and she would just say, help me, help me. And I don't know if it's because the way that the narrator for the audiobook, who I enjoyed, but also made these like very kind of like pleading, whining desperateness, which I guess is how the book maybe portrays it as, but I didn't like that in some aspects because I wanted Elsbeth to help herself. I wanted her to overcome this. I wanted her to work for it rather than just kind of like cower in, plead, beg, and then have the monster take over kind of thing. So I will say that was my kind of like one criticism that I really had with this book, but the tarot card magic, everything like that was just super interesting. I ended up giving it, I think 3.5 stars, maybe 4. I think I landed on 4, but I'm just not sure if 4 is how I'm feeling just because I did have that break and I do have some issues with it and I can't remember it very well. So I'm thinking 3.5 is where I've kind of landed, but we'll see. It was still a really enjoying read, and I do want to continue with it. I'm just in like the biggest reading slump of my entire life at the moment, so I haven't gotten that far into it, and I'm gonna have to restart it when I do eventually pick it up back again. But it was a very interesting book, and while I did have some issues with how Elsbeth did things, I honestly loved the side cast of characters in this book. So much fun. We then have the final book that I read in the month of March, and that is Heartless by Elsie Siller. I don't think anyone is surprised that I will continuously not shut up about the Chestnut Spring series, but I obviously read this back in November. Immediately when I finished it, I was like, I need to reread this. I loved it, and I have put it off, not put it off, but I've controlled myself to not read it again. And my control snapped the other night when I literally read this in a 24-hour period of time. I like sat down to read it, and all of a sudden I was like legitimately over halfway through, and I was like, oh gosh, I need to do some other things right now. But of course, this book is amazing. It's the second book in the Chestnut series, but the Chestnut Springs series is interconnected standalone, so technically you can read it in any order, but I'm begging you not to read it in order, please, because you just get little moments of when the characters meet in the previous books, and it kind of all just like is this beautiful puzzle. But this book is Cade and Willa's story. Willa is Cade's nanny, so it's a bit of a taboo romance, but it's also just so much fun. Is it cheeky, and is it at times like, there were a couple times when I was reading through it that I was like, oh, it's a little cringe, but also I was like, I'm kind of loving it. This is just such a fun, lighthearted read with like some depth to it at times, but it's honestly just amazing. And the relationship between Willa and Luke, who is Cade's son, is just so wholesome and so lovely, and I love it so much. It's obviously 5 stars. I don't really have anything else to say that I haven't already said before, but I'm begging you, if you want a country small town romance, this is where you gotta start. Anyway, that is everything that I read in the month of March. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this video and my endless rambling. I truly have not stopped talking. I'm having a great time just chatting with you guys. So as always, my TikTok and Instagram are linked down below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye everybody.